Hello, everybody. This is episode 23.
We'll be covering gender stereotypes in advertising and how they influence psychology. And but before that, we always do our news from the week. And if you're interested in only the main topic, you can skip ahead and go to the midpoint, where we usually cover the main topic in depth. But first,
weird news. I have a pretty cool news from all the Gen Z parts, actually, this time. I was looking at my my timeline on TikTok and Instagram, and there was one video that caught my eye that I deep dived into. Have you ever heard of comfort core?
Oh, yeah. I think we've also discussed this a bit.
It was really much piggybacking from the previous podcast we did, the previous episode about nostalgia. And apparently right now there's a new trend online that is mainly focusing on comfort core, which basically emphasizes functionality, outdoor inspiration, comfort as a key element. So basically a bunch of Gen Zers, they're like, oh, we're too broke now to actually buy very luxurious stuff. So what Gen Z decided to do, they're like, you know what? I'm going to wear my pajamas and going to make it a trend, because they could not afford luxuries anymore. And some of other things that also caught my eye for this comfort core as like a contemporary fashion trends at the moment is that basically everyday normal things are becoming now a trend, because like, oh, I cannot afford luxury, comfort core. I cannot afford going to the coffee places anymore because it's ridiculous prices. You know what I'm going to do? I'm going to call it a home coffee place. And now everyone's going to come to my place and drink coffee, and I'm going to call it cafe trend. I'm like, oh my God, it's like, this is just like shows how recession maybe is coming. People don't have money, and they're just coming up with this comfort core coffee place at home as a new trend. And I'm like, just, oh my God, guys, just like be more simple. Who even cares?
No, I don't. I think that's pretty cool. I think it's cool that they're being proactive and cutting down their consumption while still being socially active.
Yeah, but it's like we're kind of going back in time where people actually went into each other's houses to drink coffee, and actually were not over preparing to go to someone else's house, just like wearing normal clothes and seeing your neighbors and just having conversations. And that is becoming a trend. And I was looking at it, I'm like, maybe I was Gen Z all along. Just sitting at home, inviting friends, drinking coffee, and not actually giving a lot of attention to what I'm wearing. So that was just one very interesting trend news that I saw on my timeline. So I decided that it might be interesting.
That's fascinating. I've got less Gen Z influence, more the boomers are out of control again.
Oh,
the story.
Other side of the medal. Go ahead.
I joke, but it's Microsoft is slowing or pausing their AI data center project.
Oh, wow. Why?
Well, expensive. That's the first thing. They've been talking about making cuts to newer projects, and the only new project I can really think of is the Sam Altman-headed OpenAI stuff that they were doing a little while back.
So basically, oh, we're gonna stop it because it's just too expensive and need too much energy? Is that their justification?
Expenses is the main thing. The other thing is we've discussed this on this podcast a lot, but the revenue model is still not there yet.
That's a fair point. True,
yeah.
We did.
And so a statement on LinkedIn from Noel Walsh, president of Microsoft Cloud Computing, said, by nature, any significant new endeavor at this size and scale requires agility and refinement as we learn and grow with our customers. What this means is that we are slowing or pausing some early stage development projects.
Okay, fair.
Yeah, announcing on LinkedIn is a bit weird though, huh?
I mean, LinkedIn became such a trash time. It's like, I can see people say, this is how I lost weight. I'm like, this is LinkedIn, people. It's like, this is my morning routine. And it's like reposted from TikTok. I'm like, why would you like post this garbage on LinkedIn? But maybe maybe people are just looking for like something new as well. Just like maybe a little bit of a side note that right now every social media feels the same.
Yeah. It's homogenized a lot. But getting back to the Microsoft thing, they're still on track to spend $80 billion on infrastructure, and a spokesperson from the company confirmed this. The company has revealed changes to a variety of its data center plans, including the halt of the projects in central Ohio's Licking County.
Mm-hmm.
So Yeah, this is another scaling back on the AI front, which seems like more and more companies are going to be doing that because, well, there are two possible reasons, right? One is they might be looking for more high efficiency models rather than expensive data center models. The other possibility is that they're saying, okay, they're looking at the research and saying a lot of these AI tools are not being used as widely as they thought they would be. And we also covered a study by people who saw that adding AI to something made people less likely to want to buy it. So this might be a response to studies like that. But at the same time, AI seems to be the only thing that a lot of tech companies have going for them. So they're going to charge ahead with it, but with more caution, I guess.
What can be as well is just not competitive enough, right? Microsoft is indeed used by like boomers mostly, as you said, and now ChatGPT and Gemini are basically the biggest players on the market. So maybe that's another way of saying, well, actually, we're not that, maybe good with promoting this tool, and no one wants to use the general AI that they have. So I can see that as well being an issue.
So on the AI front, we're putting some attention on a new AI trend. Have you heard of slop squatting?
No, I've heard of AI slop, but I haven't heard about it. Was it AI slopping?
It's slop squatting.
Slop squatting. Okay, what is it?
So this is an interesting new trend called slop squatting. It's basically what happens is when you enter something on an AI and it hallucinates stuff, and then you try to look for the reference and it doesn't exist, right? A lot of people have figured out they can scam others by making the hallucinated reference up before people click on it, and booking a domain or making a fake study or something like that in anticipation that somebody will click on that hallucination. And they can do this by like researching topics beforehand and squatting on top of them, basically.
So basically, it's like a fake reference that they create, like a fake Wikipedia page that is going to be referenced by the AI while doing the research.
Yeah, the example over here that's most pernicious is fake code. So somebody will use fake code, and somebody else will copy it off of an LLM, but it'll already exist as someone has created that thing, but it'll contain malware inside.
Whoa, that's kind of like evil genius situation.
Yeah. So look out for that if you're doing AI coding, guys.
How's the way AI coding is called right now? Vibe coding?
Oh, yeah.
If you're doing vibe coding, please beware. That might be just a malicious. I actually remembered there was a guy who was doing vibe coding, and he said that he basically I created this app, and then when he launched it, basically stole all of its crypto. Oh. So he's like, I just copy pasted the code, and then he was running this, and then at some point he wanted to do some transaction on his PC. While like testing it, and apparently just stole all of his money.
So here's some reporting from the Register. Exploiting hallucinated package names, represents a form of typo squatting, where variations or misspellings of common terms are used to dupe people. So this is like a continuation of that thread.
Wow. Oh my God. Finally, now I think we spoke about cybersecurity being the biggest like gap in the industry, and this thing is just like speeds up the process of actually getting into the industry. So like the gap widens. So there's just for everyone else, there's not enough cybersecurity experts in the world, because everyone's building, but no one's building securely. Everyone's like building features, but no one is actually making sure that they're secured or encrypted. So people are focusing on this like growth scaling or like blitz scaling, but then after shit like that happens, they actually have to do the blitz fixing. And the blitz fixing is obviously the other side of the medal, that you have to protect yourself before you push anything into the open, or you need ISO certification. Now, a lot of agencies and a lot of companies, they're actually being picked as a serious partner only if they have ISO certification, which is like part of the cybersecurity, let's say, vertical of like what you have to do as a company. So that's, I'm linking that. So that's pretty cool.
Yeah, it's a very interesting problem that'll continue to grow as people try to do coding on their own with AI.
I can totally see that being an issue, but it's like it's not getting fixed. It's going to get only worse then.
Yeah. Aside from that, a bit more gaming news.
Tell me.
I've got two pieces, but The first one I'll present right now, which is the price of the Nintendo Switch going up is more complicated than just the tariffs and just all that other stuff.
Okay, yeah, I've seen there is a lot of controversy. Like, this is how much a game costs on this market, and this is how much it would cost on the other market, or something like that.
So a lot of it has to do with the Japanese currency devaluing in relation to the dollar. But also, the global currency rises have also happened. So those $300 would have been the modern $500 or $600 price tag that we're seeing on the Nintendo Switch too.
I think tariffs and like just the dollar going down in value doesn't help.
Yeah, there's some really good reporting by The Verge. If somebody wants to check it out, they have a very detailed explanation of it. But yeah, the Nintendo Switch being more expensive is going to be the first nail in the coffin for the economy, weirdly enough.
Yeah, that's true.
People getting even so much more angrier when their consoles get expensive.
It's just gonna boycott it, I think. And also, you cannot pirate Nintendo games. I think that's also one of the things, that there's no cracked versions. They secure it so well. Talking about cybersecurity, they really secure it so well that there's no like emulators that you can launch and not buy the game, or it's like overly complicated to actually do it.
Nintendo's also really, really on the lock for any time there's a emulator out there. They instantly find a way to ban it. They're hawks on that.
Talking about Asia, I have one piece of news that actually right now is happening, well, basically in China, because the tariffs were implemented and they're now super ridiculous, and Trump, our best friend, is changing them every day.
Yeah.
What happened? So Chinese manufacturers, they reportedly exposing the origins of luxury detail brands and products. So what happens right now in Chinese manufacturers, they're posting videos online that reveal that the actual products that, let's say, people are buying, I don't know, let's just name drop as an example, like Apple or any Android devices, game devices, Gucci, Nike, are being produced in China. And basically these Chinese manufacturers, they just say, hey, buy it from us directly for only 1% of the costs. So basically they imply that the manufacturers are offering the same, very similar products. Let's say they just said, oh, it was Gucci, but now it's so expensive to sell it in the US. You know what we're going to do? Call it Marucci or whatever, and just sell the same product, just with a different name, like slapped on it, for 1% of the price. So basically, yeah, and selling it directly to consumers. So this is how, as well, Chinese manufacturers are exposing and boycotting the tariffs that are being implemented. And there's also like summarizing that there's like a Uno reverse card for the whole industry and the whole world that is buying stuff from China. So they surprise revelation, right, that undermines the perceived exclusivity and high costs that people in the West think the thing costs, when in reality in China it's like 1% of the cost of that product. So basically Chinese manufacturers are like memeing about it, and it's like, yeah, guys, well, if you want this expensive device that you're buying for $300, you can buy it for $10 from us directly. So that's how they're also kind of pulling this reverse Uno card on the tariffs. So I found this hilarious with this manufacturer's boycotts. I think it's just funny.
Yeah, there was this thing where they were asking the very high level financial advisors in the Trump administration. They're like, why would anyone buy cheap goods from China when they can buy American goods of high quality, you know? And that's so behind the times, because China has caught up. They're making really good electric cars. They're making pretty decent phones. And they've had the technology and the various know-how from all these factories that have been producing in China. So the Chinese engineers can match American quality if they want to.
That's true, but they're leaving all the high-quality products in China because that's where they want people to use actually high quality. And the Western world just wants quick, cheap garbage, and that's what they're getting. So yeah, it's pretty funny. Have you heard about the drama actually surrounded about Minecraft movie?
No.
So it's basically, we were at the movies, a few days ago, and there was a kid like staring at the poster while we were like passing by. And basically there's a lot of controversy right now. There's a bunch of lawsuits for Minecraft. So it's called Mojang Studios, basically the creators of Minecraft. They're facing a lot of lawsuits with allegations that they made the game intentionally designed to be addictive and addicting to kids. So, and they're like disguising it as like, no, there's no like kids don't have mental issues. Young people, they just love our game. It's not about anything like that. But the movie is like broke the box office, so it's one of the biggest launches this year. Yeah, it was 162 million domestically and 434 million worldwide so far, but it was released on April 4th, 2025. So it made bank. It grabbed a lot of attention. Right away, there's like a lawsuit going on because all the attention is on them. It performed better than the Mario movie that was also like released not so long ago. So basically, also they are kind of very dissatisfied at the cinema specifically about the over-the-top fan reactions. So I've seen a whole like video yesterday from a guy on YouTube that is called Papa Meat Channel.
Oh yeah.
And he was discussing that there's like videos and reports emerged from all these like kids and people cheering and like erupting in the cinema, and they're screaming chicken jockey.
Yeah.
So the chicken jockey was like someone put like another person on their shoulders.
I've seen some clips like that.
Yeah, like chicken jockey, which is featured like in the trailer as well. So basically, it's like the post-ironic humor that everyone is like just erupting in the cinema. I found it so hilarious.
It's the Minecraft version of the Pickle Rick meltdown at the McDonald's.
Yeah, exactly. I want some Szechuan sauce. Yeah, bring back the Szechuan sauce. Yeah, but this is where again I found it very funny just because the movie was released, all eyeballs are now on them. All the lawsuits, all the stuff that basically happened because of the movie. And Jack Black was in the movie, by the way. Yeah. Jack Black, on an interview, he asked, like, what do you think about the movie? He's like, oh, you should see it. I watched it and I have very like different opinions and I have to think about it. So he never gave like a direct answer what he thinks about the movie. And he kind of waved away and like stepped away with all of his answers about the movie because of all the controversy that is right now happening with the movie. It's like, would you recommend watching? It's like, yeah, it's very interesting if you want to see it. He's like absolutely not answering the question. So I think he's also like getting caught up by all of the stuff. So yeah, it's super funny.
Anyway, speaking of video games, I've got some video game news, and I cover this whenever I can because the regular press does not. And you can see mentions of it and getting glossed over, but one of the largest video game industry unions is just being launched.
Whoa, okay. What will it do?
445 members have joined since its launch amidst industry-wide job losses and escalating federal crackdowns on workers' rights, as reported by Wired. And the United Video Game Workers Union has just launched, but they're going to be having a tough time against the National Labor Relations Board in the U.S. because it's currently being heavily defunded and attacked by all sorts of billionaires, and they've been trying to defund that for a long time. So they're trying to get their contracts through. So if you work in video games, try to join a union.
It's mainly for like overworking and underpaying and stuff like that, I guess, right?
Yep. Well, there's a huge number of problems in the video game industry. One is crunch time.
Yes, that one is the biggest one.
It has one of the highest rates of burnout in any industry. There's also this entire issue around how many studios report profitability, but then they start cutting all their staff suddenly. And that's usually because of hedge funds and all of these and financial incentives that they have, where even if a game does well, people are going to get fired.
So the game is done, so screw you. We don't need these people. Fire them all. Thank you for the crunch time.
Our next project is going to be a little more low-key. You've already developed all the assets. We're just going to reuse them, and this creates a lot of turnover, and workers are fed up of it.
Fair enough. They should be.
Yeah,
it's actually a very good thing. I'm curious if in Europe they have that.
Well, over here we have much better labor rights laws. So the U.S. needs this because the tech sector especially is one of the most pernicious for this, because any new industry that comes along, relatively, it causes all these problems. There's the whole thing, speaking of which, slight deviation on the same topic.
Yep.
One of the big reasons CGI grew over practical effects is because of bad unions among CGI artists compared to prosthetics makers and all of these more analog types of producing movie effects. It's essentially cheap labor gets recycled constantly.
This reminded me, remember there was a copyright strike, like not copyright strike, but copywriters, they were striking in US as well because like AI was replacing their jobs.
Yeah.
So it reminds me of that. Did it actually, like, was there a resolution for that?
Well, they're back, so I think there is some resolution on that part. But speaking of that as well, just recently, yesterday, Elon Musk and Jack Dorsey were tweeting about abolishing copyright laws.
Oh my God.
Why are we not surprised?
Our best friends, Elon Musk and Trump, they show up on this this podcast more than they should.
I know, in any sane world, they wouldn't.
Yeah.
But the world is not sane.
Oh my God.
Any more pieces of news from your side?
No, that was it.
All right. Aside from that, I had some other stuff, but I think we're going to start running low on time if we keep going.
Deal. Let's do the main topic today is gender stereotypes in advertising.
All right. Have you got something to kick us off?
Yes. Do you know the definition of gender stereotypes?
I mean, you know it when you see it, but defining it is a bit harder, isn't it?
Yes. So gender stereotypes are oversimplified beliefs about traits, roles, and behaviors associated with men and women, often learned in like kind of leaning into cultural relation of that stereotype. So they manifest in advertising through physical characteristics, role behaviors, for example, domestic or professional, and occupational status. So can be personality traits as well. So basically, it's a generalization of a specific trait that a gender has.
I should also mention up front, most of our research is very heteronormative, and it is dealing with the main binary of gender rather than anything extra. And if anybody wants to get mad, remember, Alex is the white guy on the podcast. I'm just a minority. Everybody attack him.
I'm not going to say anything about that, but yes, I'm white trash. Come at me.
Jokes aside, we are dealing with heteronormativity this time around because that is the prevalence of all sorts of advertising. I'll have a little bit that goes outside that at the end, but we're mainly dealing with men and women as perceived in most culture because that's the majority of advertising, sadly.
And it comes to historically, right? So this objectification of some sort of gender norms, or like treating a person, or in this case, mostly women, that you can see that as a like object of commodity and focusing on physical appearance, for example, body parts. So these examples, they come from different countries in a different way. So that was a very, as well, interesting part that I saw in the research, that obviously some Western countries, or let's say Netherlands or US, Brazil, China, Japan, you name it, they have very, very different stereotypes for men and women. And they also have very different stereotypes for race. And obviously, when the whole culture is based around that, let's say, common generalization, marketeers, they cannot not use it because that's such a low-hanging fruit for them.
It's also that a lot of advertising is about persuasion. And when you're trying to persuade certain people, you play on their wants, needs, and also their insecurities and anxieties.
Yes, that's actually a very big point that I can talk a lot. But there's obviously the way it came to us knowing what are gender norms in advertising currently. It actually started, like, I want to say, in the like mid 20th century. So by that time, the domination by traditional roles, like women as housewives, obsessed with the domesticity, men are like these like breadwinners and authority figures. And ads back then, they often basically piggybacked on that and depicted, let's say, women needing men's approval. And that was basically a lot of advertising for like smoking or like cleaning products and stuff like that. Then in the 70s and 80s, there was this emerge of the new woman, right? So there's actually like a stereotype that started being born. So again, advertisers, they play this kind of reverse Uno card. You're like, you know what? So, or like a liberation is coming to the ad agency, and you know what we're going to do? They call it like sell products. They're going to empower women, and women remained still, even when they tried to do this new woman, they still were underrepresented in professional settings, right? Because that's when the housewife stereotype was actually a big thing. And then what they started doing for men, while like putting this like women stereotype on a pedestal, they called it the mumbling dad stereotype was born. So like, oh, men, you cannot find where's the cleaning product? Ask your wife because she's smarter and better than you. And then that's how they positioned the ad back in the 70s and
there's actually something really interesting about the inclusion of women in advertising and when they were being advertised to rather than them the husband being advertised to. This started with when women started joining the workplace, and they suddenly had all of these all this disposable income. And when that happened, the advertisers suddenly had to figure out how to market to women. And one of the most landmark cases in this is how Edward Bernays hijacked the women's liberation movement a little bit for his advertising portfolio, basically. So Edward Bernays was the nephew of Sigmund Freud.
Wow. Okay, that's something I never would think about.
He is one of the most influential marketers of all time. One of the things he did was he noticed that women don't smoke as much because they worry about their appearance. They worry about this sort of social stigma. And he realized where stigma exists, a chance for rebellion also exists.
True. That's like the opposite side of the medal.
He launched this campaign called Torches of Freedom.
I read about that. Oh my God. Yes, I know that one. It's pretty cool.
And he basically told women, light up a smoke for women's liberation. And it made sort of women's lib really cool. But you see this also influencing the movies of that time. Because suddenly every movie poster has this woman with a long stick and a cigarette at the end. You have the femme fatale who smokes cigarettes wantonly, but she's like sort of dangerous and self-reliant in movies. So all of these things were part of a massive cultural movement. And of course, this is also proof that gender norms and gendered behavior are on a sliding scale, constantly going back and forth in very strange ways.
Yeah, and it's also maybe marketeers who actually put that out there to kind of brainwash everyone what the stereotype is without actually the stereotype being there, right? And I wrote as well that in the late 20s, what happened, it was rise of femvertising.
Oh, yeah.
So the femvertising was challenging what you just said, the stereotypes, right? However, the stereotypes often became more subtle, and objectification, ageism, the mumbling dad still were part of it, but they start giving it another twist, therefore separating all the people and groups into smaller groups, right? So they can, this is the target audience that actually believe that this is the torch of freedom. So therefore, now we have a target group that we can advertise to that. So the femvertising basically faced as well a lot of criticism for potential lack of authenticity, right? Or commodity feminism, right? So in the digital media, it makes it much easier as well to come up with a fake trend or a fake gender advertising problem that they're trying to solve, and therefore even more separating people on the markets to target to them. So that's where we are in the digital world. It became much, much easier to do rather than, let's say, back in the beginning of the 20th century or 80s, 90s.
Yeah. There's an episode of Charlie Brooker's Screen Wipe which covers advertising throughout the ages. And he made this, he compared a advertisement featuring a woman from the 60s and one in the 70s. And the 60s one is just her being a model and just, rubbing her hand across the car and just trying to attract the male gaze pretty much. And the 70s one is this woman gets fed up from work and then she just drives on a country road while RESPECT plays in the back, and it's the switch up that happened from one decade to another. That's really stark in that one comparison of advertising. And that had so much to do with the wider acceptance of the women's liberation movement and 1970s with Gloria Steinem out there and all these prominent sort of feminist writers writing about social issues. It was also the rise of the social sciences in those days.
And that's created as well that other bucket of audience in my head. So the advertisers, they can kind of focus on when they try to create an advertising with their product. Yeah. So all these I wrote down as global manifestations of that. So common stereotypes, which I'm just gonna read this through. Don't take this the wrong way, guys. This is just research. Common stereotypes worldwide: women often shown as caregivers, focused on appearance, like domestic issues, passive, younger than men. Men were often portrayed as professionals, leaders. Competent, sometimes domestically incompetent. Again, bumbling dad. And children advertising heavily reinforced gender roles through toys and colors as well. So that one was very interesting because at the beginning you mentioned, it's like, men and women, but also kids, they kind of all generalized as well in another bucket.
Yep.
Let's put this with another target group. So advertising to children is also part of the, I would call like a gender advertising, but there's a very strong stereotype for that as well.
On that same note, a study I found detailed the different archetypes of women in advertising, the most prominent ones. And they include the decorative role, the recreational role, the independent career role, the self-involved role, the carefree role, and the family role.
Okay, yeah, I can see that.
These all sort of spring up in advertising most commonly, and they're like good. They're not good. They're neutral in most cases, but they're a way for advertisers to pinpoint, okay, this is what we're going to use this time, and this is the angle we're going to approach gendered advertising with.
That's pretty cool. I have some as well examples. There's like radical examples of advertising where it's over objectification. So even if you're going to probably pick one of your, let's say,
the archetypes.
Yeah, specific archetypes, you kind of can take it too far as well.
Yep.
And there's like so many examples of that. It's like overly sexualization of minors, for example, trivializing violence, reinforcing harmful norms. And there's so many like examples of companies on a regional or let's say like specific market ads that they've created. They really push the norms. I remember there was a very old ad about like a washing detergent in Japan.
Yeah.
Do you know what I'm gonna say? No. So there was ads in Japan. I think it's like in the beginning of 2000s where there's like this very tiny Japanese lady. She puts like a black dude into a washing machine who's the detergent, and then there's like a white dude pops up.
Oh my!
You completely forgot about that one.
Yeah.
And when I saw it, I'm like, okay, this is interesting, but this is how like bad it can get. Like, and this is how generalized it can get as well when it comes to advertising, what they're gonna do. For me, in my head, I'm like, how did they go through this? I imagine there's like a whole board of like marketeers, like, yep, this is what we're gonna do. We're gonna put a black dude into a washing machine, and then a white guy pops up. So yeah, that's exactly what's gonna boost our sales.
Yeah.
And then of course they got backlash like everywhere.
It was just a bunch of people who thought it would be funny, just a little edgy joke.
I think like this is where they took it a little bit too far of like, hey, we're just going to play on the stereotype.
I mean, considering that this, I'm bringing an example from my own hometown, and there were these guys who started a sandwich restaurant, and they thought it would be really funny if they named all of the sandwiches after male abusers. So there was a sandwich called the Bill Cosby, for example.
Wow. Okay.
So they took like this edgy joke that they thought, ha, everyone will get this, right? And women were not having it. They like bombed their Facebook reviews and everything. This is like an old example where I think, wait, this is like an idea that's funny for like 2 minutes to like in a frat house. But the second you think about it, is like, where are you going with this?
Yeah, but it's like a funny thought. Haha, that would be funny, but like no way you want to like actually do it.
Don't invest money into that nonsense. Keep it to yourself.
I sometimes love advertising, but sometimes I'm like, this is just like how does it go through? Like how is this like okay?
Yeah.
Not even when it comes to like gender stereotypes, so like anything.
Yeah. Now, when you were talking about things going way too far,
yeah,
there was this research I found on PubMed, and it will be linked in the description. And it's a meta-analysis of tons of different studies and studies that were analyzing advertising and their gender effects and the psychological impact of them. And it found a few common themes. For example, indirect effects of advertising for both men and women include symptoms of depression, psychological distress, higher proclivity for sexual coercion, substance abuse, and increased perpetration of risky behaviors. For women, especially, it led to the idea of the sort of like eating disorders. For men, it doesn't lead to eating disorders, but it does lead to distress, psychological distress, and feelings of inadequacy. So, and that mostly has to do with the images on a lot of advertising is very idealized. People are very chiseled and good looking, and they're unrealistically beautiful. They're all models, right? So this gets in your head sometimes. These are the effects for both men and women, but the majority of this is also focused on how women feel, because men are not usually as idealized in advertising as women are, and there's very few types of women represented in advertising. They're usually either domestic or they're very sort of like role modelish types.
This is the part of like objectification as well of women in ads, right? Because like, oh, it's about the looks, and for the guys, it's about how you should be behaving or something like that. I mean, it's also probably the same for women, but it's like such a different stereotype that they pull out for eating disorders. Definitely for a bunch of gym bros who are like, oh, I'm going to the gym because they saw an ad. They're like, oh, I want to be this tall and this strong and shredded. Yeah, no way you're gonna be that. That's not your, for example, body type, or you don't want to get a eating disorder. Like, you really have to be critical as well of what you see. But based on research, this repetition of like awareness of how it should be, it still lands in your head, and you're still going to be feeling like very bad about it.
Yeah. For men, a lot of advertising, like think about like a Rolex ad or something like that, it plays on status. Yeah. For women, it usually plays on insecurity. You got to have this, you got to have that. Oh, is your makeup not good enough?
I feel it's changing as well for men, actually.
Yeah, I was going to get into this later on, but I have a few ad backlashes about gender stereotypes and things like that. But that said, we still have some ground to cover, because I have some historical inversions and some real concrete impacts that advertising had.
All right, tell me.
All right. The first one is everyone sort of thinks blue is for boys, pink is for girls, but it used to be inverted back in the day.
Really?
Yeah, because pink was seen as closer to red, so it was seen as an intense color, and it was associated with the boys back then.
How back then are we going? Do you know?
1910s.
Oh, that's really, really like 100 years ago.
Yeah, 110 even. But blue was associated with girls because it's light and it's calming and blah, blah, blah. It had much more to do with the color spectrum than it did with one specific color. And what changed was that these rules weren't set in stone back then, but they became set in stone when we got prenatal scans. So suddenly we were able to know the not the gender identity, because gender is slightly different, but you could assign gender at birth much more quickly, and you could say this is this person's this is this child's sexual characteristics versus this child's. So they're gonna be there's gonna be all this marketing heft put around new parents. Mm-hmm. So you're having a boy. Here's a set of blue. Here's a set of like more pallid colors. If it's a girl, it's pink, and it's this, and it's flowery, and this was only more reinforced because those more intense colors became women's colors, like pink and so on, because of like Technicolor and color printing and all this stuff. It all sort of converged to create this idea of blue is for boys, pink is for girls.
So then it's basically changed, right? So the gender stereotype changed during the time, right?
Yeah, it got solidified, I'd say.
As well, right? But it was different, right? So it changed and got solidified.
Yeah, again, this varies from country to country and culture to culture, but I'm mostly talking about the West,
Yeah, fair.
And one other thing is, for example, high heels were originally developed for men.
That one I know from somewhere, yeah.
Because they used to be made for clasping onto stirrups when you're horse riding, and they were really important for like field marshals and things like that, and roles like that, I'd rather say. And what happened eventually is all these companies were producing these shoes that were made with a sort of a latch-on stirrup and so on. So the functionality changed, Because another function these shoes had was they made you look taller, and women wanted to suddenly look taller after a certain point. That also was a cultural shift because women didn't originally want to be that way. They wanted to seem meek and tiny and petite. So suddenly this shoe design transitioned into being a women's wear kind of thing. And if you look at like pictures from the 1800s, they're all wearing those high-heeled shoes. Those men are like wearing wigs and all floofy looking.
That's true. Oh, that reminded me now. There's like a fashion, not the comfy fashion that we spoke about in the beginning, but women wearing these oversized man jackets, and for me that was very funny because I was having a walk yesterday, and then I see this like influencer meetup or something, and every girl that was there who's an influencer, they were dressed exactly the same. It's like oversized white shoulder, like blouse, pretty much. I'm like, okay, this is another way of like, hey, it was made for men, and then obviously now it's the trends are changing. It's not just very funny.
It's also just the modern aesthetic for women is very different. There's more representation of different types of women, obviously, and advertising is not as set in stone. Right now it's become a free for all since the competition has increased so much. So you'll have all this the working women ads. You'll have the stay at home women ads. You will have the teenage girls advertising. And all these have different plays on different sorts of ideas of who you're targeting. So overall, while like there's a lot of gendering in there's a lot of the advertising is so much more broader now.
Mm-hmm.
So overall, it's improved over time, even though it doesn't feel like that, and everybody's really annoyed by ads all the time. The modern landscape is much wider, and it treats women a bit more humanistically than it did in the past. And if you don't believe me, watch old ads.
Oh my god.
Yeah, they're always very, very intense.
There was some research done that basically found no correlation, or no, sorry, they found a correlation that having a gender specific ad actually doesn't boost sales.
Yeah.
So basically they mentioned that having inclusive ads actually boosts sales. So it doesn't mean that you have to piggyback on a specific gender specific category of the ads, but you can just say, hey, this product solves that problem, therefore just buy it. So it doesn't have to be like showing a housewife or someone. It can also be like the sloppy guy, right? The sloppy dad who's like, oh, I just need to clean the floor or something. So, but these consumer behaviors, they also change. There's also in the modern trends, like stepping away maybe a little bit of like what gender roles are, is like back in the 60s, as maybe we should roll back, like it was women have to stay in the kitchen, haha, that's the joke, that's the stereotype. But now, like if you look at it, I mean, a lot of people just have no idea how to cook. Like it doesn't matter who it is, a dude or a woman or a girl. It's like it's that's just putting it out there now as a not gender specific but a more inclusive let's say solution of like you sign up to cooking class. That will perform better. Why? Because just the lifestyle change, not only the stereotypes change. I mean, the stereotypes might be the same because like that's how it works, but the solution to how to advertise the problem like is also changing. So I think that's very interesting.
Yeah. Another part I wanted to cover was how job roles are interpreted in advertising. Computers were originally marketed towards women. Because it was a very secretarial job.
All right.
Back when the computer used to be like putting like a wire from here to here, and literally the job computer, for example, was considered women's data entry.
Do you know a person called Ada Lovelace?
Oh yeah.
She was the inventor of the first computer.
Yeah, exactly. Stuff like that. But eventually, computers became big business, and so they were to boost interest in computers. Suddenly, they were marketed towards men very aggressively, and so a job in computers, your first computer. Here's the computer for like boys to learn, sort of premature coding on, and all of this. And women's advertising lagged behind. So suddenly you had this shift where computer scientist was seen as a male job.
It also feels like more like how would you call it? Not like it's a male job, but the purchasing power was at men's maybe corner at that point,
Yeah.
right? So women maybe did not like dominate the job market back then.
It's also has to do with the fact that computers used to be secretarial. Now everyone's starting to use them. And not only that, the people who are starting to use them are like business owners, and you need to market to them, and the majority of business owners are men. So showing this as a competent device means targeting men specifically.
So just the functionality changed.
The functionality changed, the job market changed, the place of the computer as being like a side accessory became much more of everyone needs to know how to use this. And usually when something's targeted towards everyone, they safely slant it towards male. I'm not saying that's right or wrong, but it's just how the human society tends to work right now.
For me, also, when it comes just to generalizing the genders, like specific advertising, they, in a nutshell, use the same psychological tricks and like vulnerabilities of people, right? As you mentioned before, it was like like body dissatisfaction, self-objectification, maybe lower self-esteem, limited aspirations, like all the like anxiety, piggybacking. So it doesn't matter what is the gender, but the psychological effects are all the same. And they're like, again, like doesn't matter which companies is it. It's like, oh, for example, Nike sells running shoes, right? So like, oh, do you want to be leaner? Nike running shoes, just run. Hey, do you want to be? And it can like be for a man the same way it can be for a woman. Like the same product is just marketed for the same like solution, just run.
Yeah.
So it's like gender neutral products, but the way they position it though still can be like just again pushing down your like self-awareness and your body dysmorphia, and just using the same psychological tricks on both genders.
There's also a subtler thing going on, right? Which is ads that target towards expertise or knowledge and so on are much more likely to use a male voice and male representation as an expert figure, whereas items that are inherently female gendered, in terms of perception, like washing detergent or some nonsense like that, those will have a female voice. These sort of enforce that this is like a man's product and this is a woman's product automatically. And I don't think there's anything about washing detergent that men shouldn't be encouraged to use it.
Men don't wash clothes; they stink and look dirty.
Like now it's just making me think of the Axe ads. You remember?
Yeah. It's like smell like a man. You're like, okay, it's just like the same thing. It's like it's the universal product. Yeah, but I understand what you mean.
So there's also, now that we're getting to the meat of the matter, which is modern advertising and how it uses gender. Whenever ads have started to realize that things are very played out, there are some very set archetypes that we talked about, and they try to deviate from them. This often causes backlash. So an advertising company will be like, we're going to feature gender non-conforming people suddenly. And that's them jumping on a trend, certainly. But it also causes a massive backlash. And you might be like, well, why would they do this? This is a risky sort of ad. But risk is actually part of the calculated marketing campaign, because they're like, oh, this will make very specific sectors of the audience very angry. And it'll go higher on the rage-based algorithms.
I mean, it's just piggybacking on like sexism and like piggybacking again on these gender norms, as you said, has a risk. But also, if there's no regulation or people don't take action on this, it's just going to continue, right? And the brand awareness of these specific ads is just going to continuously reinforce the whatever that ad is, right? All the psychological problems.
Yep. There was also this ad, well, it wasn't an ad, it was an influencer marketing campaign by Bud Light.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, the cans they gave Dylan Mulvaney, who she didn't ask for them, but people got so mad. And Bud Light is sort of one of those brands that is man associated, and as the fact that if they had sent it to just a assigned female at birth woman, that would have already caused a stir in my mind, But they sent it to a trans woman in particular, which caused 3 times the stir.
For me, what I've thought about is what was it, motorcycle company, Harley Davidson.
Oh yeah,
these guys, like the target group there is like 99% male, and they're all like probably 60 plus, and that's their like target groups. Like, oh, you have to be loud on this motorcycle, and you have to be like wearing leather clothes, which is like super weird. You should have a long ass beard that it has to be like already gray. It's just, for me, super fun as well how they use their advertising and like their stereotypes. But that's exactly those let's say boomers who have the engraved perception of gender roles and like, let's say, man gender.
Yeah, a lot of the back in my day kind of guys.
Yeah, back in my day. And this is like a perfect target group. This is what they advertise for. Right? Yeah. And also, these are the people who have the highest purchase power nowadays, right? Everyone who's 60 plus, because they whatever, they got their house for like 2 oranges and a tea bag. So for them, like, of course I have $50K to load off to buy Harley Davidson, and they know it, and the company knows it. And actually, I never researched, but that would be very interesting to look at what kind of backlash Harley Davidson got.
They did. I remember seeing everyone angry on Twitter, but Twitter is usually just a hornet's nest, so nothing much there. But as for actual polling, I'm glad the Queer Rights Association did a polling and showed that 75% of respondents were comfortable seeing LGBTQ ads, LGBTQ people in ads, and for many it was more than just feeling comfortable, but they liked that there was a sense of support. So 75 is a pretty vast majority in my mind, right? So a lot of this backlash happens on the backs of very loud minorities within the overall public.
Yeah, but you cannot. It reminds me of like greenwashing as well, right? We spoke about these programs that now.
I agree, and for me, where I land on the whole greenwashing debate and having representation in advertising debate is, this is the world we live in. It's best to get your bag.
Yeah, but also
even if it's with all these sorts of caveats and addendums to the contract. I know it's a lot of greenwashing and all that stuff, and companies often release these advertisements after they've done something horrible.
Right, well, they have to save their ass somehow. But the thing is, like, how you cannot do it all, right? Like, I'm just thinking, if you're a company, you cannot really do it all. You cannot really, let's say, do the greenwashing depending on your industry. You cannot really, like, be as inclusive as you like should be, because there's always you cannot satisfy everyone, right? It doesn't matter if it's gender specific, you just cannot satisfy everyone's feeling and opinion and views. So therefore you have to strategically pick how you're going to position your product or to whom you're going to market. It's just that as like with the ads in Japan or the Bud Light, I think like some of these things, they just like, they don't think about it. They don't critically think if that's going to work. I totally see as well like the difference we just spoke before recording, that in Japan it's like less than 1% of people living in Japan are actually like not Japanese, right? So it's like a very pure nation. So piggybacking on pure nation.
Wow.
Pure nation. I don't know how I could have said that.
It's a very homogenous nation.
I don't know how I could have said it better or worse. Lost in translation, everyone.
Holy crap.
Yeah, but I see how it's like such a low-hanging fruit for them to again piggyback on stereotypes.
Yeah, man.
I understand that you cannot think of all of it, but this is also a very lazy way of doing ads, or a very lazy way of approaching a campaign.
I mean, it is, but when you look at the alternative, which is no representation and just you don't have variety of people in there, so you're in a weird sort of balance. Yes, it can be disingenuous and it can be badly done and it provokes a backlash, but at the same time, you just not want Do you want the only people in advertising to be the most cookie cutter looking white guy, white girl sort of people?
That's also true.
I mean, that's been done to death, and these are creative agencies. Marketing is a creative form as much as it takes a beating from all the other creatives. You have to sort of differentiate yourself in some way. And look, I'd rather it be the weird, disingenuous kind than it not be there at all, you know?
So I'm just thinking, which kind of ads you lately saw that were like so gender specific? Can you recall anything?
I was going to bring up a Gillette ad that caused a huge controversy.
Yeah.
Which Gillette took a bit of a swing. I don't particularly like this ad. I just like to be upfront about it, but I do think the backlash is very, very overblown. They made an ad where it was like, real men don't do this, real men don't do that. And it was all just sort of this toxic masculine kind of stuff where they were kind of going, real men don't go running after women on the street or something like that. It was, there was a guy, speak out, speak to your boys, that kind of thing.
Very alpha.
Yeah. It was like, here's how to be like a standard good dude, and it was Gillette.
Andrew Tate energy.
Anti-Andrew Tate energy, sort of. But it was kind of like preachy, so a lot of men got very angry about it. And I was just like, whatever, it's an ad. I don't really care. This is not something that should take up brain space. But it was very gendered, and it marks a very specific flip in what they wanted to do, because they wanted to do a play on that whole Gillette, the best a man can get, sort of, and position themselves as like socially responsible. And that's not usually done with men's ads. Ads geared towards men are usually very egoistic. Mm-hmm. We discussed like Rolex ads and Axe body spray ads, where even if they're ironic, they're very centered around making men feel desired and making men feel like strong, And this was one which aimed sort of social issues and critique, and it generated the backlash because of that. Generally, I don't think it's a very good ad because it is very preachy and very direct. I don't know what that has to do with shaving. But at the same time, the backlash was insane. Just like, why, guys? There's no need for you to blow up on Twitter and start sending death threats to the CEO.
That's also true. Well, I mean, they should be afraid because of the other news before. But yeah, I don't like when this gets like pushed too much, when it gets radicalized too much, or let's say commodified too much.
Yeah.
I'm okay if like, hey, men should, wash their hair more often than once a month. I'm okay with like promoting stereotypes that are going to help other guys to, let's say if it's like focused on men, it's going to help guys to be a better person, wash your hair more often, I like, do you know the company Manscaped?
Of course.
Right. These guys, I love how they do it. They're like, men should, shave more often. Men should use this cream more often. You should take care of your skin more often. I'm like, yes, like, is it telling me to be healthier? But of course, you have those like very manly men who is like, no, I'm not going to use sunscreen. They're like, no, I'm not going to shave. I'm going to stick. No, I'm not going to wash my hair. Like, come on, like, dude, like, what is this? Like, you're like a neck beard or something? Just like take care of yourself. So taking care of yourself as a stereotype, and it's a positive stereotype.
That's also an interesting thing that changed about men, which is back when I was a teenager, there was a word for a guy who used to wash up or take care of his looks too much, and it was just like metrosexual.
Yeah,
they used to call them that. And now it's just expected, just wash yourself up.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, that's a good positive change. And there's a lot of resistance to it, as evidenced by that term being kind of a slur on other men.
Yeah, but there's still those like closed-minded men that are not going to see this as a compliment. Where I said, oh yeah, you smell very nice. I'm like, no, I should smell like sweat. What are you trying to tell me? No, so like for me, I think that pushing the positive stereotypes when it comes to genders, I think it's pretty good. If we take, let's say, cultural stereotypes as an example, in Italy, they're like, Italians, they really like high quality food and they really like their cultural food. Is that bad? No, that's a very positive stereotype, right?
I guess so, but there's two schools of thought on that. One is positive stereotypes are inherently still stereotypes. They so box you in a very specific way, and they often lead to unspecified negative associations. I don't fully ascribe to that. I'm not like when somebody says, "Oh, Pakistanis, they make really good doctors." I'm not like, "How dare you?" So,
no, we don't.
yeah. But there is that perspective out there. I don't ascribe to it, as I said. But yeah, the box inherently is bad. Would be the summary of that.
So you're like challenging the status quo is the way to go, in your understanding.
It's more like the entire idea of generalizing anybody, whether positively or negatively, as an entire population is dehumanizing. It sort of makes traits seem much more inherent when they probably wouldn't be, even if they are positive ones. So it's a complicated discussion, and you and I are not equipped for it.
So there's no one answer or one solution to this. It's just interesting to understand as well for everyone who's listening and watching is that it evolved, right? It came from somewhere. It had specific stereotypes in the beginning. It changed. Marketeers, they also, or like brands and companies, they try to basically use anything and any technique they can, be it psychological or be it stereotypical, some sort of piggybacking to just sell their product, right? So because any ad you see, if you critically think like, what am I looking here? Ad here, like, is it actually trying to make me feel better, make me feel worse, put me in the box? Is it challenging the status quo? What are they doing, right? Because if you're like a rebel and the whole, let's say, stereotype or the whole ad is like making you feel like, oh, you're a rebel, so therefore you have to do this, they still want you to take action. Yeah. So like you really have to think, am I buying this product or am I using this service because it's actually appealing to me? Is it actually like reinforcing my stereotypes of who I really am? Like, I think it's just about the critical thinking of what to do. Yeah. Of course, you could go on Twitter and be super loud about some sort of advertising that really
affected you.
Affected you mentally, but I think it's just an ad, guys, right? So even these like companies, if you want to boycott them, do that, right? It's like maybe it's going to be even better for the world. So you're not going to buy some crap on the internet that you don't really need, that actually struck a nerve or actually said that, yeah, you are strong, independent, or you're such a masculine person, go buy this thing. Like in my head, I was like, you just have to pick your let's say battles and pick your let's say products that actually you need, not because it's stereotyped.
And like we said, backlash is a calculated part of most of these campaigns as well.
Yeah,
it's free. If you're not touching a controversial topic, to sort of like get people enraged on one end and have people supporting on the other. But at the end of the day, they tweet out hashtags with the company's name on it, and the company's name goes everywhere, regardless of whether it's positive or negative.
Who do that? Hashtag me too. Some company that completely
that blew it. Oh yeah, we've covered this like a bunch of times on this note.
It's such a great example.
DiGiorno's Pizza. Yeah, that's the bad way of doing it.
Yeah,
because that was bad social media research on their part.
That's true, but I think it's such a great example of like you're like, oh, let me just join the whatever is happening. It's like, yeah,
no, be smarter. Don't hand the intern the keys to the Corvette.
Delete the internet, man.
But yeah, so backlash and stereotypes and all this, they're very sort of integrated. Gillette was one example. Another example is how they Volvo, I think, put a whole bunch of people who were gender non-conforming in their ads, and people got very angry. And that's kind of the situation that companies are in right now, where they've covered everything to do with men and women, so you have to cover outside the general gender stereotypes you see in advertising. So that's gonna enrage some people. It's gonna make other people uncomfortable. It's gonna make some people feel like they're represented. But at the end of the day, like you said, it's some of that is greenwashing, and some of that is pinkwashing, specific term for this. And I think a good ad is one which actually makes you want to buy the thing.
So it's solution based. This is when we're talking about general marketing. It's like you have to look at solution-based advertising rather than like, I mean, of course, depends on the product, but you have all these like ads that focus on functionality. Let's put it this way, yeah, in the digital world. Then you have ads that are focused on like gender stereotypes. Others, you focus on how it makes you feel. So it's not specifically gender, but like you feel strong, but it's gender neutral feeling of like being strong, for example, or smart or whatever. So for me, as well, supported by research, that being inclusive or like non-gender specific actually has a better effect on advertising than actually pointing at some sort of like femme washing, right? Or was it femdvertising, right? Or like menadvertising. It's like you can do that, but it's just like such a lazy way of doing it, I feel.
Yeah. I think we also covered this in a previous episode that Gen Z and Gen Alpha people are very uninterested in traditional forms of advertising. They don't feel seen by that. They like more subtle kinds, like subtle as in either more subtle or very direct that just tells you, hey, this thing is good because of this, this, and this. They don't like emotional plays.
Maybe it's also because they have a attention span of like 5 seconds, so that also can maybe play a role. But yeah, but like now I'm just thinking it's like how in general the creators, right, of these ads can ensure that advertising reflects like these, let's say, diverse realities, right? And maybe that's where what's your answer was, like you just like focus on the product, make it about the solution, right? It's like don't fall back on like familiar things.
I mean, on one hand, that is the solution in our minds, but also that can make advertising very boring. The entire reason they started making these broad emotional appeals and appeals to sort of the ego or the identity is because traditional advertising became swamped with infomercials, and then they had to move on to this will self-actualize you. This will make you feel like this. We're trying to be artistic here. This brand is like has an identity on its own that you can relate to. So it's messy, you know?
Yeah, there's no one solution. It's like you just have to not push it too much. But for me, I always try to look at things in a very like two sides of the spectrum. I try to like find examples of like when they're pushing the narrative, and the first thing it's Andrew Tate that comes to mind now, because he was really capitalizing on these insecure men and telling you how to feel and like how you should look and how you should act and treat others, which is very radical from like a dude's perspective. But also there's another side of the medal that was like a simp land, right? Like this is you as a simp, this is how you should do.
You got a white knight for everyone.
Right. So like this is where you have these very opposite sides of the medal, but it's much easier to relate to that. And of course, I'm not going to get into how potentially people get on like one side or the other. It can be radicalization. It can be just like not really paying attention to things and like kind of going down the river with the flow and not thinking about it. So is it about critical thinking? Is it about strong beliefs? Is it about like just changing trends when it comes to gender advertising? Like it's probably not really like you can be everywhere on the spectrum as a radical or like not radical, let's say like very like mild, or you can kind of combine it in between. But I think, as you said, it's messy. Like there's like the advertising that is screaming the loudest and the most controversial stands out. Like there's no bad PR, right? Some people say, which I don't agree with. There's like bad ad can be a very bad ad, and it can really have a big backlash. Yeah. So it's like you have to critically think who you are and know your audience and know what your brand stands for. Yeah. But brands change too. Brands cannot piggyback with like washing detergent. You cannot piggyback all the time on like the same stereotype through like the 20, 30, 50, 60 years. It's not going to work.
I mean, it's worked for Axe body spray, I guess. They've generally gone from like doing the same stereotype, but doing it very earnestly, then doing it ironically, then doing it like post-ironically, and now they're piggybacking all the way back to doing it earnestly, but it's the same sort of stereotype. So some brands can, but that becomes so ingrained with their identity that it can be a bad thing. The other point you raised that I really like is how these those man influencer types utilize male insecurity. So that's a really interesting emerging trend because of how socially immobile society has become, and a lot of men feel very trapped. Like they're not married, they don't have kids, and they don't have like a ton of money, and they don't own their own home.
They're still virgins at 35 years old.
Yeah. So they kind of go looking for somebody to validate that or invalidate that, because a lot of these influencers will use will sort of call them brokies and things like that, and sort of like neg them into participating in their course or something like that. And traditional advertising has not, as far as not widely at least, used male insecurity, but the influencer landscape uses it a ton.
That's true. But like, I think influencers, they always show this perfect picture, perfect life, perfect body, and so on. But it becomes, even now, I feel that the needle is shifting, and it's going to become boring because it's all the same. It's all the same stuff, all the same things. And influencers who get a little bit tired of this, they just open up and they say, well, you know what, actually I have body dysmorphia and eating disorder, because like I have to do so much work to keep the the physique and also like the social status to look the specific way.
A lot of times they're just lying. Like you can rent aircraft to do your photo shoots in.
Yeah, but I'm talking about the opposite. That like right now it pushed to such extremes.
You mean the influenced people, or
the influencers themselves? It's pushed to such a perfection, and it's so much work to keep the standards up high that they're actually opening up right now and say, well, actually, all of the things I told you made me unhappy, and all these like psychological effects they had on me. So therefore, they kind of rolling back into being influencers without pushing the stereotypes sometimes.
Yeah.
And I think that's a good thing, personally.
The problem is that advertising often sells you a myth about who you're supposed to be, what you're supposed to do, blah, 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 this and this. Nobody can really live up to that. And the myth gets eventually smashed, you know? That's why we change the stereotypes around, because we realize, oh, that one's a bit played out, that one's the unrealistic. So like the opposite starts happening. We get to get a bit of a dose of more realism in there. And especially with the influencers that we were talking about, they're gonna seem cheesy after a while because they go so intense. You know, it's gonna become an artifact of the time, just like all stereotypes and all stereotypical marketing eventually does. That's one of the big drawbacks, because when you're playing on topical issues, your ad becomes irrelevant really quickly.
Yeah, because everyone does the same thing. Like every man influencer has exactly the same playbook. Almost every female influencer has exactly the same playbook. And it becomes boring. Like, and that's where it's going to become less effective, especially if you're focusing on specific gender, like specific advertising, right? So coming back to the topic of like being inclusive works better, right? And being like real works better, rather than like being more sexist and pushing the let's say to your ads or your influence to the one spectrum or the other.
Yeah.
So it's somewhere in between. The truth is somewhere in between.
I mean, I guess so, but ultimately the point was that all of these are like artifacts of the time. So if you try to believe in sort of the bio truths, like biologically, this is how men are, this is how women are, this is how this type of person is, you're going to eventually be proven wrong by time, or, you know, unless you're doing something so general that it does apply,
but
which will be boring. Which would be boring. Yeah.
Yeah. So what's your conclusion on this?
Gendered advertising is always going to exist. Look out for it. And don't be too easily influenced. There are good ways to do it, certainly. If you're going to talk about complex issues, you need to do it in a complex manner rather than doing whatever that Pepsi ad did. Everyone remembers the one.
Be very careful as well who you follow, because who you follow, they also kind of, the main idea is to engage, rage bait, and make you actually like follow them more, maybe disagree with them, because if you're disagreeing, you're engaging, and therefore you're boosting the algorithm. So you have to just be very careful about who you follow and why, and just declutter and critically think, what are they trying to show me, and how I should react to that.
And if you're trying to market to specific people, don't be pandering. Pandering can just put them off. The other thing is, you got to put your money where your mouth is. Like we had talked about Bud Light ads. When the backlash happened, they left Dylan Mulvaney all on her own. They didn't do any support. They're like, well, we got your name plastered everywhere, and now you're receiving the bad end of it. That will make you look bad. It made Bud Light look really bad.
And if you're going to be challenging the status quo, also please think what next stereotype you're going to piggyback on if you're going to challenge the status quo and the traditional way of advertising.
Yeah. That said, we've already made it clear that gendered advertising is going to exist for the foreseeable future.
And it's a mess.
It's a mess, but also research well. Like, actually ask women before you make the ad. Like, otherwise you're going to have 40-year-old executives making the decision without any idea what they're talking about.
I'm like 90% sure that's how it's actually being decided. It's like, yep, looks good, go.
But yeah, our conclusion on the entire matter is be smart about it. We all like live in a similar world, but like some people have such a skewed perspective oftentimes. Make sure you've done the polling, you've done the background research. But if you're gonna just try to be controversial and make a statement, that can work in your favor, but it can also
be ready for the backlash.
Be ready for the backlash and be prepared. Don't just be like, we didn't mean to do this.
Yeah.
Stand by your guns.
So thank you everyone for listening. We are approaching actually 1,000 followers on TikTok. So I think that's very interesting. We're getting some engagement. And we are going to be working on adding a Patreon where you can buy us coffee, actually.
Yeah, that is right. We'll put up some extra content there, maybe some live streams and interesting stuff that will add value.
Yes, we're still working on it, but this was a great idea after 1.5 years of doing this. We would like you to buy us a coffee if that's okay. Thank you everyone for listening and enjoy. Have a nice day.
See you.